All right. Thank you all so much. So welcome to Who Rules in the Metaverse, part of the City of Sydney's Visiting Entrepreneur Program. I'm Dr. Sarah Kinkle-Miller with the Graduate Research School here at the University of Technology, Sydney, and I will be your MC for the evening. Before we do officially begin, I would like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the ARIA Nation, upon whose ancestral lands our city campus now stands, and to pay my respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging, acknowledging them as the traditional custodians of knowledge for this land. So, who rules in the metaverse? The increasingly immersive realities of AR, XR, and VR technologies open up these incredibly exciting possibilities for enterprise, for art, for connection. That said, I suspect that events in the recent past have made some of us a little skeptical of what technology can do when it's unfettered by ethical concerns and ethical frameworks. But we also don't want to lose sight of the good that might be possible from these new technologies, about how they might support or inspire us to move forward to a future that we really do want to live in. So as these technologies come to be increasingly prominent in our lives, which they probably will, what rules do we want to make for them, and who are those rules for? We have a fantastic panel for you tonight, people who are really coming to these questions from a very broad range of perspectives, but they're all really deep in the trenches. They are building the tech and the platforms and the professional communities that are going to make this possible. They're developing the frameworks and asking the questions that are going to help us figure out what's really desirable in this space and grappling with what that means in practice. So this panel has been organized by the Sydney Knowledge Hub, based at the University of Sydney, which is developing strong partnerships between researchers and industry and creating a research-based innovation ecosystem to help foster that collaboration. By UTS Graduate Research School, where we are training leaders in the responsible development and use of these new technologies to support our rapidly changing society. And UTS Startups, which is supporting and inspiring entrepreneurship at scale, both in the UTS community and also increasingly here at the public in this fantastic new Startups at Central Space, where we are showing about 1 million people a year what technology-powered entrepreneurship can do. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't note that the City of Sydney had in part made this space possible through a knowledge exchange grant, and we are very grateful to the city for their support of the work that UTS Startups is doing. We're also, of course, really fortunate tonight to be having this conversation in the context of the broader Visiting Entrepreneur Program. This is a series of free events organized by the City of Sydney with partner organizations from the local ecosystem. So it connects high-profile international entrepreneurs with Sydney's innovation community. And the 2022 edition on the theme Future TBD is kindly supported by Tech Central and the Greater Cities Commission. And so, of course, we are grateful to all of those organizations as well for making tonight possible. It's 10 days, 11 global experts, 17 inspiring and free events where we can engage with a future that we can dream about, discuss, debate, and sometimes maybe debunk. The full program runs through tomorrow, so there is a closing event taking place tomorrow at Canva's headquarters in Surrey Hills, and you can see information about that at city.sydney/VEP. Couple final points of housekeeping before we officially kick off here. Toilet facilities are located around the corner in UTS Building 3. There is signs, and also any of our friendly UTS Startups staff will be able to help escort you if you get lost. We'll be talking together until roughly 6:30. There will be a chance to ask questions during that period. There'll be some more drinks, nibbles, and a chance to chat after that. We'll be wrapping up at 7. If you are live tweeting, our hashtag tonight is #VEPSyd, SYD, and you can tag the city at City of Sydney. That is enough about us. Let us move on to the actual experts. As I said, we do have a really fantastic panel. We're going to be hearing from them shortly. But first, we're going to have a brief keynote from our guest of honor, visiting entrepreneur Belle Bay. Belle is a lawyer turned entrepreneur, and she's CEO of BuzzAR, which is a Singapore-based Metaverse startup. BuzzAR is poised to be Southeast Asia's first Metaverse startup to fully scale the 7 pillars of the Metaverse, including online gaming, virtual reality, augmented reality, digital twins, avatar engines. Coming in 2022, it will expand to include NFTs and social networking. And their current seed round is oversubscribed with global investors based in the US, Hong Kong, and Singapore. Belle, thank you so much for being with us tonight. I know you wanted to be here in person. 2022, being what it is, didn't quite end up being possible. But fortunately, we have all been getting a lot of training recently in connecting over a distance. So hopefully that's going to prepare us for the metaverse to come. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Good to see everyone. Can you guys hear me well? Okay, cool. Yeah, my name is Bo, and I run BuzzAR with Ken, my co-founder. We are a small team of 20 people. I mean, thanks, Sarah, for giving me such all the kind words. But I think I will keep this 10 minutes something to be useful to you, if I may. I could probably share my personal journey, like. You probably don't want to know like whether right now, but you may want to know like how I started and how you could similarly apply to yourself. So I try to be as transparent and as authentic as possible. So feel free to ask me questions even like throughout this sharing. So personally, I'm a gamer, lawyer, and if you could name anyone that should build a Metaverse startup, I'm completely out of the picture. That said, I'm very fortunate because I'm a gamer, right? So I play games since 2015 and built the game together with a team of 15 people at that point of time. We were a small game studio in Hong Kong. We don't have much resources. It's really those kind like bootstrap, a few people. Every month we increase one head count, that show. And slowly we grew to publish 20 games. And globally we have a network of 20 million gamers throughout all our family-friendly portfolios. One of that, you can check that out. It's called the Cooking Game VR. The Cooking Game VR is deployed in web, apps, VR, AR, and right now Metaverse gaming. So we also call ourselves that if a small team like us can survive through all these years and thrive, I don't know how many of you are university students. You can completely relate to all this, how small it was and how we grow from 0 to 1. So right now, I'm onto the journey to build the 1 to infinity. So backtrack a little bit, like after I sort of like have this idea, I want to build a series of family-friendly games. I reach out to my childhood friend. He is a gaming veteran. So that's how I have the technology's help. And together, we merged our company last year. So from my co-founder, he has existing gaming studio, developers, circle of friends. So if you are thinking of starting your own, I would encourage you to also review yourself, what you are good at. For example, at that point of time, how I started, it was because we have this family-friendly game. It's called the Cooking Game VR. And my co-founder wanted a family-friendly looking person. It's not a compliment. So he picked me, and that's how I started. And then I sort of like got my hands dirty with UI, UX, designing different game restaurants, like from level 1 till level 33. So it's completely possible, even though you have no tech background, that you can still get your hands dirty. You just need to find the right co-founder. And after that, after 2015, I have been doing it part-time, right? But on a daytime basis, like daily basis, I was a lawyer at Marina Bay Sands. It's a complete opposite kind of occupations. But I also did a lot of deep reflection, like which one suits me better. So since I was a kid, because I'm like a typical Asian family, my mom and dad will only want me to study doctor, lawyer, engineers, dentists, pharmacists, those kind. Like, so I can't really tell them like I want to be a gamer and all that. It's out of the picture. Gamer equals to not doing anything to my parents. So yeah. Then going back, because I proved to my dad that throughout these 3 years, I have all the dedication, even though I lose a 6-figure yearly legal career, but this is my passion. I want to do it for real. That then, even with that, he was very strict. He didn't really allow. Then I went one step further. I went to apply a scholarship from UC Berkeley. Then I got the scholarship. And now I can go back to tell Dad, like, hey, Dad, it's a scholarship for my master's program. My major is law and technology. So I'm not deviating too much. Please don't be worried. But secretly, I have incorporated my company right away. Then I flew to the US. But over there, I had some difficulties. It was quite tough for me as well. Then that was the point. Like I sort of like, you need to persuade your co-founder as well to do it together. And that time he has thrown a challenge to me. If you could get one Fortune 500 company that wants to publish, like, be it a game or a software or gamified software, I will give it to you. Like, then I will join you because I run a profitable company. Why should I join you? I have no contacts. So I went back to my first, like, my employer, asked for a contract, and that's how I got everything started. So I went back to my employer, and my employer was like, okay, you were always the lawyer that off the light, like work until the last one to go back. I'm not asking you to work until the last one to go back, but that was what he said. So he gave me a chance. I started with a pilot project. It was just 80,000, and slowly we grew to like 500,000. And right now, our company, the turnover was about 3 million. So that's what I want to say. Everything is really small at first, then you slowly build out your momentum. Earlier this year, we wanted to raise 3 million, but in the end, we raised about 4 million. So this is all like part and parcel. So I would just encourage you to build the momentum. It may not be obvious from day one. I just want to share my whole journey with you because I think even one person from the audience, you can take away with something. I have done my job. Thank you.
Belle, thank you so much. Such determination, and I think there's a lot to take away from that. I want to hand over now to our panel and to our moderator, Jackie Randall. So I would like to invite our panel to go ahead and come on up. Jackie joins us tonight from the School of Cybernetics at the Australian National University, where their mission is to establish cybernetics as an important tool for navigating major societal transformations and ensuring safe, sustainable, and responsible approaches to new systems. Thank you, Jackie.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Belle. Before we go back to Belle and just ask her a few questions based on that beautiful introduction and very inspiring personal story, I'd just like to introduce our panel and then find out who's with us today and who we're speaking to so we can frame this conversation in your best interests. So it's a huge topic and we've got about half an hour to chat. Then we're going to be opening up the floor, so do save your questions and join in with us. But I'll just let you know who I've got sitting beside me. So right here is Robert Yearsley, who's the CEO and co-founder of ARIA Research. He spent 20 years in consumer technology and AR, and he developed the first AR glass device, providing spatial perception to visually disabled people. So welcome, Robert.
Thank you.
Next to Robert, we have Julia Scott-Stevenson, Dr. Julia Scott-Stevenson, who's here with UTS on a fellowship, which is absolutely fantastic. I love to meet people who are on these research fellowships because they're quite hard to get. Julia's a researcher, a producer and curator of interactive and immersive media. At UTS, she uses practice-led research to explore how immersive media might help us address the climate crisis. So looking forward to hearing from you, Julia. And last of all, we've got Carli Johnston. Carli's the co-founder and head of product for Virtual Method. She's worked in AR and VR for 6 years, and she comes from a designer, brand and culture strategist background. She works with celebrities and household names, and she's the co-founder of Australia's only Women in AR and VR group. And there aren't enough women in this field, so it's so good to see so many women here tonight. So let's welcome our panel, and also another round of applause for Belle. Are you there, Belle?
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks so much.
Hi, Belle. And we had a chance to have a quick chat the other day, and I have to say your personal story is very inspiring for everyone here tonight. And I was also moved by how you've overcome the perception from your family and cultural background about what it is to be successful. Thank you for sharing that with us. I think a lot of people don't take the gaming industry seriously enough. Would you agree?
Yeah, unfortunately, but I think it's getting better. Like over the years, it's getting better right now.
One of the platforms you've designed, Happy Tunes, is all about trying to give people an experience of happiness. And when we were chatting the other day, you said that part of your ambition was to enable people whose real lives might not be as happy as they'd like it to be. Can you share a little bit about your motivation for Happy Tunes with us?
Yeah. Okay. So story time again. How I have like this mission with me is it was because like during my childhood, it was a not so good childhood. Just to be completely transparent, I suffered quite a lot of difficulties, abuses. I think likewise for many people, especially in the current digital virtual era, a lot of people are suffering not only the physical abuse, but the mental abuse. This is also why when I designed the kind of games or apps, it has been surrounding the fact that it has to be family friendly. So I think in everything that we do, we sort of have to also ask ourselves like, why yourself, right? So it really gels with my own personality from the within. And this is why I started. Happy Tune is a software that we want to build technology that can go hand in hand with ethics. So on the technology front, we have computer vision. It recognizes the human facial muscle joint. And by uploading a static photo or you snap a photo, you can instantly turn into your cartoonish self. Like you can be a Disney cartoon or like you can be quite many characters. And after that, you can even animate yourself by putting different songs. Sometimes it's just like when you are taking a train, then it's just a quick happiness that we can provide to people. Yeah, so that's Happy Tune.
And who does Happy Tune, who's it popular with, this platform?
Oh, surprisingly, like 80% of our audience is female. I don't know why. I'm trying to figure out why. But I think maybe because all this while, the cooking game, like bakery game, some other, all the other games, we have been learning the user behavior, and it's just our niche that we are strong with female audience.
Interesting, thank you. Well, look, I just did forget to ask who's here tonight. I wanted to start by finding out Who's been hanging out in the metaverse already? Put your hand up if this is a place you've spent time in. So a couple of people, about 3 people. Who's really curious to understand what it is tonight? Okay, that's good to know. And who here is from an academic or university sector? Okay, so about a third of the room. And who's working in a startup? And are you thinking about getting involved in the metaverse? Hands up. Yeah, so we've got a really interesting spread of people who are here. And I guess I'll just start right up. Like, what is this metaverse? How is it different to gaming? Is it just a more complicated gaming? And I thought I'd just throw that question right up to Julia.
Sure. So I guess you can describe it a couple of ways. One way would be that it is a series of interconnected virtual worlds that are laid over our physical world and are interoperable to some extent. But you could also say that actually it's a marketing term and it's a kind of an umbrella term that sits across a suite of technologies that might be augmented reality, extended reality, virtual reality. And so there are a lot of things, kind of like the early days of blockchain, we like to throw the word at it, and similarly we like to throw metaverse at a lot of things that may not actually be a metaverse. It's not one single thing, but there are a lot of technologies that might sit within that.
Okay, thanks. And Carli, you've just got back from a trade show in the States. What did you see there that was interesting?
Yeah, I just got back from the Augmented World Expo. I love going to that event, actually. It's in Santa Clara. I've been going for about, I think, 6 years now, and I guess it was different this year. There was so much focused on visual positioning systems, sort of like augmented reality, like Pokemon Go, better optics, smaller form factors. There's just so much actually to talk about. But there was probably the thing I was looking at, there wasn't many women there this time round, which was quite starkly obvious to me. And there wasn't really a focus on some of the software applications that I was looking for. So at the moment I'm getting a lot of briefs for avatars, configurators and those sort of things. So yeah, just a different type of conference for me this year.
And Carli, what kinds of services are clients approaching you for? You mentioned that a lot of people ask you for a metaverse platform, but they don't really know what they're asking for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think first off, people are wanting to know what it is still. You know, most people are still at day dot, trying to understand what it means for them and their business. And I think it's different for everybody. For some people, it is very much virtual, you know, and that's going to be the case, and that's okay. I think for some people, it's about digital twin and the layers, you know, kind of like the Magicverse, building social layers, infrastructure layers, all those things, and that's also okay. But yeah, I mean, it's very conceptual. It's a big vision, and there's a lot to be done before we get there, in all honesty. So don't feel. I mean, I think about it now. This time last year, I was at an event at ACS, and I was talking to a couple of the people there about what the metaverse was, and I don't even think they were really that interested. You know, it really wasn't something that people were looking at. You know, trying to convey the relevance now is, obviously an open conversation, but before I don't, it's less than a year, there's a lot to unpack here.
And I have to ask you, what's a digital twin? I'm sure some people in the room would love to know.
Sort of like a digital replica of anything really, a digital twin of a garment, of a building, sort of, a layer on top. I like to see it as, yeah.
Okay, thanks. And so just finally to Robert, you've been working with technologies that target people with disabilities. How do you see this working for that sector?
Pretty much the same way it works for everyone else. I think, so topic being, who rules the metaverse is a wonderfully loaded question, because we look at who's driving, and I'd argue that we're very much in the marketing, not only just marketing term, but marketing distraction phase of an emergent technology. And it's fortunate that it's almost an accident that Facebook's got themselves into a bunch of shitty situations and trouble in the last couple of years. They just want to change the topic of conversation. So quickly rebrand and look over there, that shiny new thing. And I think as a result, it's opened up huge opportunities for creatives and given a lot of air cover for technologists to actually sink their teeth into some interesting ideas. So how this relates back to people with disabilities, for us, they're just consumers, same as everyone else. The use case is just slightly different. So the problems that you can actually solve in disability land actually apply typically equally or more so to the consumer space. From my end, I'm in a very fortunate position that my primary user is blind. And if you're blind, you really don't need an AR display like a HoloLens at all. What you do need is AI and AR and spatial perception. And hand in glove, this turned to be a huge opportunity for us simply because we don't have to wait another 8-10 years to wind up with this kind of form factor for an all-day device. You throw away the display, all of a sudden a lot of stuff we're talking about in the future becomes possible. And if we have to solve that for people with disability, that's great. There's huge utility delta. But what we learn is equally applicable to the consumer markets.
Interesting. So when we were chatting the other day, you were very sceptical about the business drivers behind the metaverse. And for Apple, it's to sell us really expensive products that we need to really enjoy the experience. And for Google, it's the search engines. How do you think we're going to get more transparency around those issues?
I don't think you'll get any more transparency. It's a game of who builds the most successful platform. So it's a question of what is the business model driver behind it. And if we want to look at this coming from a good place, think about what those business models are. So Apple will have the best XR, AR kit on the market, and it'll be a beautiful product. Won't do a lot, but it's going to be fantastic at what it does. And that's great because, Apple aren't that concerned about, that their primary business driver isn't selling your information. However, Facebook, on the other hand, oh my God. Meta's future business model around this is really, if you go on past business model, I fear the future, to be blunt. But you look at someone like Google, who sort of sits in between around search. There's plenty of opportunities for a Google in the world to actually, strike a balance. I'd think about this in terms of motivations and business models, and I'd rank in terms of most benefit, least harm, probably Google, Apple, and then Meta. I don't know how you guys feel.
I might throw to Belle to see if you'd like to respond on anything that any of the others have said.
Yeah, I'm particularly intrigued with what Robert just said, like ranking Google as number one. Because earlier on we started off, I think personally I also refer to Google business model a lot. A few reasons. First thing is we build games, we publish on Android, Play Store and all that. It's quite straightforward. But when we go to the fact that we publish digital twin of a shopping mall, I was also analyzing a lot on visual positioning system, which is originally Google's they are pioneering this system. VPS is super interesting. So I think just now Julia also said the same, right? So to me, I would also rank Google, but I'm at the same time, I wonder why they have not really make a lot of feedback as to whether they are joining the Web3 space or not. That I can only see Google Cloud is entering the Web3 space. I have been researching all day long. I can't really see other niche that the whole Google businesses have is entering.
Yeah, I'll throw it down on an answer for that one. My take on what Google's strategy here is to basically they're defining it as a data war. That platform that has the most amount of data about the world wins. So I see their investment going to autonomous vehicles and a relationship with auto manufacturers to embed, a business model into every vehicle, every autonomous vehicle that continually hoovers up fresh data about the world at a street level. And in that way, they'll manufacture an unfair advantage before AR glasses actually really take off, before the wearables happen. And in that way, it's quite a sound strategy to end run most of their competitors in the market. So I think that's where the investment's at. They don't actually have to engage with the consumer or the creator yet. Get in bed with anyone doing autonomous vehicles, every major car manufacturer, and then you wind up with a natural extension to things like Street Food, Google Maps, etc., that they can build upon. That's my guess.
So look, these are really complex issues, and I guess it's a matter of following these stories and getting the inside knowledge through reading the commentary, right?
Yeah, and drinks in bars helps too with the right people.
I think there's some third sector areas that are really important here too. So, I mean, trying to rank corporations is possibly a bit of a mug's game when I'd probably put them all in the same basket in terms of problematic nature around surveillance and privacy.
Yeah.
And we've got advocacy organisations, we've got NGOs, community groups. Mozilla does some really interesting work, universities, of course, citizen groups, and the media and creative arts in terms of making work that pushes back on some of this and highlights some of the issues by making stories that we can kind of engage with on a consumer level where you don't need to be a technologist to understand what story it's telling you and what that means for you as an audience member.
And I guess this brings us on to the big questions of ethics in the metaverse and privacy and all the kind of data governance issues, which, we would be foolish if we weren't worried, given what we know about social media and particularly companies like Facebook. So, Belle, I just wanted to ask you, your platforms use facial recognition technology. How do you kind of maintain those privacy controls and transparency around that?
Two ways. The first one is on the application itself. The UI UX is designed such that once the user ended the session, we automatically delete all the images that the users have created. But the actual reason also is surrounding the fact that we are already a small startup. To keep every image, it's really expensive.
Yeah.
That's one. Then on the second level is that personally as a founder, I'm almost like the really loud one here in Singapore to proactively approach the government. And I kept saying to them that I want to work with you because there are no obvious standards, protocols to govern like IPs, content, and every day avatars are generated. I told them about like 2.2 million avatars have been generated. I don't want to get into trouble. So the governments have been working with us to set some of the protocols. Even though Web3 is self-governance, we still take the proactive approach. So that somehow is also why I wrote my own privacy policy, code of conduct, on the app website. Yeah.
So the data governance is something, Carli, you come across a lot in your work. What are your views?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot to unpack. First off, we all have phones in our pockets, and every day we pull them out and we take photo of our friends. We share them on social networks. We share them with each other. We give our personal data over freely. Back in the day, people would sign up to free Wi-Fi spots. Like, this is such a hard thing to just push on the big tech companies, I think. I think it's a conversation that everyone needs to think about, from themselves, what they're willing to give over. If you're going to be in virtual land, look at the terms and conditions. When we integrate content in our platforms or we use other platforms and we build on top of them, we're always looking at the terms. I could name quite a few right now that we've gone, you know what, no way. We're not going to give over our user data or anyone else's user data. We're not happy, or their ethos doesn't align with ours. We've got to constantly think about that. My partner Dave in the audience has half a law degree, which really helps. So he's constantly reviewing these things, and I see companies even using Matterport. Like, I had to pull out like a name, but when you use that platform, the content that you give them, they own. I don't know if many people know that. There's a lot of other things in there as well, but that's a constant consideration. I work in the enterprise, so we build solutions for companies. We don't have a product per se.
So it's very much a conversation with the consumer. And Julia, you were telling us about some proactive privacy games that you've worked on to try and get people to engage.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a producer of a project last year called Privy 2, which screened at Copenhagen Documentary Festival online because of COVID. And we had a sound artist, Jason Snell, in the States, who wore an EEG monitor, which read his brainwaves, and he used that to compose music with a piece of software that he'd written. And by having a live audience online at the time, that directly impacted on the output of his brain, because he was kind of on show in this really kind of quite stark environment. And we were using that to start a discussion with people about how much data are you giving over. And in these kinds of technologies, augmented reality, extended reality, we're not just talking about your likes on Facebook. It could be gaze tracking data that's collected if you're wearing a VR headset. If you're using motion capture, it could be gait data. So some really finely granular material about you that's quite personal, health data, heart rate, all kinds of medical information. And it's a lot to ask, too much to ask that an individual person is on top of all of that. And also your own privacy is not just about you, it's about how you interact with other people. So you might make some decisions for yourself, but you don't get to make those same decisions about everybody else that you're interacting with in these worlds.
I might just pick up on that thread just for a moment. A lot of people think about AR and VR, and then there's a new Metaverse thing coming. You've really got to understand how these technologies have to work. And I love calling out the basic issue of user interface and what that actually means for these new technologies. So everyone's, dreaming of something that looks a bit like this in 5 or 6 years' time. This doesn't come with any buttons. You're not going to be doing hand gestures waving around on a virtual user interface. You're certainly not going to be doing voice control because it doesn't work when someone opens the door and all the noise comes in. What's going to be happening is an AI is going to be monitoring what you're doing, your context, your intent, continuously throughout the day, for 8 to 10 hours a day. A company owns that AI. A company on a platform is going to understand the context of your behaviour, moment to moment, minute to minute throughout the day. Why would Facebook be interested in this? I don't know. Let's think about that for a second, but it's an absolutely frightening future in one sense, and sorry about wearing the black hat on this again, it's going to go there. So if you consider that what we have at the moment in terms of, you can call it privacy evasion, I'll just call it the current state of reality, we're going to be peeling away an extra couple of layers of the onion pretty soon around this. And the fact is that you're going to have an AI system strapped to your face, seeing what you see throughout the day. Even when you lean down to go to the men's room, it's all going to be there.
What a horrible thought.
Well, yeah,
Not
dick
just
pics
you,
again.
Robert, but anyone.
Dick pics again. But
Yeah.
but point being is that it won't. So the point being is, we talk about privacy. We talk about this huge opportunity that is upon us because the platforms of the day rule the day. You don't read through the terms and conditions of Facebook and go, no, I don't believe that. You're in or out. You want the service, you opt in, and you grin and bear it along with everyone else or not.
Okay, so Carli's burning to say something there.
Yeah, this is not a popular maybe thought at all. I'm really excited about having an AI doing all the boring stuff that I want to do. You know what I mean? Like that I don't want to do. My AI could be talking to somebody else's AI and they could have a conversation and all these things I don't care about. You know what I mean? Like I hope that I can give them controls and permissions on things that help me do my life better. You know what I mean? Make better decisions, things that I hadn't seen, give me education or like wayfinding, whatever it is that I'm struggling to do in my daily life. I would love that help, actually. I've got 2 kids.
And you're willing to trade off. You're willing to trade off your privacy?
Oh, I'm willing to wait for a solution that solves that problem. Anyone out there who's looking for a startup idea? But yeah, no, I'm excited about that. I'm actually, I'm hopeful, but I'm cautious. So.
Belle?
I think all these conversations really sparks memories. Like, so I studied at UC Berkeley in 2018, right? So privacy was already a big issue for Facebook back then, and a lot of, not to mention even Google. So it's not very common over this part of the world, but in San Francisco, everyone knows about it. So the interesting impact statement that my professor told me was that people don't need people don't need privacy. I don't know exactly the word, but it's people don't need much privacy. People need more trust. So it's really interesting when he mentioned that to me. And he was the default, he's like the de facto privacy textbook writer of the whole of America. So if you study whichever university in the US, you have to read his book. So he is like the guy, the privacy like endpoint. So when he said that, I was like blown away by his words. Yeah, so sometimes we may need to delve deeper. Is the trust issues or is the privacy issue?
Interesting. So, Julia.
I do think that's a really interesting way to put it. And because, so for instance, Carli's view here of saying, you know, I just want something that makes things easier.
I'm waiting for the solution too.
Just that kind of terrifies me, but I see that so many people have that position. And so what we want to see is trust in the people who are building those things that you are going to use. And for me, that means bringing the people that it's for into the design process. So talking to the people that you're making it for, and ideally making it with them, rather than having a committee of technologists who then design for somebody else.
So can I just... You go.
Okay. Yeah, I just sort of, this is an issue. I am doing a bit of a straw man here, but this is an issue near and dear to our heart, and also practical reality. In what we're discovering, what we're doing with ARIA is these questions are all front and centre, because we're not just dealing with normal consumers, we're dealing with what most people consider a vulnerable group. So how you handle data privacy, how you handle data sovereignty, how you handle the role of the AI, what sits on the absolute edge, what goes to the cloud, how do we build our systems to be robust enough that we don't know what's going on. All these questions are front and centre, because the threshold around doing harm versus doing good and the trade-offs get really interesting in the disability space, because it's really clear you really don't want to fuck this up, you really don't want to stuff this up, because the consequences are huge. And you absolutely don't want to be in a position to even being perceived to take advantage of a user base that's already having a hard time. So it's actually a really fertile ground to start experimenting with some of these ideas, because the sensitivity is so high. You know, this is one of the situations where attempting to boil a frog just won't work. People are concerned, people are up in arms, and they're really interested. So this is, there's opportunities there to actually look ahead a little bit and find out what works.
I'll just give a plug to the place where I work, the ANU School of Cybernetics, where we're looking at the metaverse as a system that interacts with many other complex systems involving people, the environment, and technology. And we're always looking at the technology that's made by humans. It comes with all their set of biases that they might not be aware of. So the question of who's building these AI-enabled technologies, who's building them, who's in the room, who's not in the room, and who are they for, is a fundamental conversation that we would like to see happen before one piece of tech is even begun to be created. And so this idea of inclusivity and having a diverse pool of people involved with the design, I think each of you are very committed to that. If anyone wanted to speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, we get a range of briefs that come through. We work right across from consumer and brand, enterprise, and not actually military, we almost. But yeah, I mean, I had a brief recently where I got asked to look at building a metaverse for First Nation people. And I was kind of blown away that someone had approached me for that, because they were sort of saying, well, you're in a minority in the tech space as a female. I'm like, well, yeah, but I would not know the first thing. Like, why are you asking me? It was such a sort of moment for me, like, are we here still? Like, why this shouldn't happen. No one should be approaching me about this. So, and I imagine I'm not the only person that gets approached with these sort of briefs. These conversations, as you quite rightly pointed out, the people, not by proxy, shouldn't be, involved. They should be leading. They should be fundamentally centre to the project. From the R&D part, so often we do an R&D before we build a project, think about all the things, all the the tech stack and how we're going to get it done, user experience and the teams and all the rest of it. At every point of that process and that pipeline, there is a conversation around ethics and, you know, all the intrinsic things that happen, you know, for the user. So, yeah, it was just such a strange conversation. I just didn't even really know how to handle it. You know, I hadn't really been approached for a brief like that before, so just one.
Belle, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think this is really common for female founders to have this issue. Like I was informed so many times that I think you cannot pull this through. I don't think you will make it. Like, it's okay. I can just shut them. So I think regardless of the circumstances, I think people like like Jackie, Carli, we just have to pull this through, regardless of what they think.
I think it's just the questions and making sure that those questions are on the table. And if in some situations the metaverse is just, if you don't know what you're doing and why and who you're doing it for, why build a metaverse? So it's having that strategy before you even think about it.
I think there's I see that the world has actually evolved a lot in the last 10 or 15 years around the concept of diversity is actually not something you tick a box for or try and have to do being dragged, kicking and screaming. There's a generational change happening at the moment, and it's a good one. And it's actually sort of gone hand in hand with, you know, millennials coming up through the ranks, which is awesome. But I think what's happened is that people have figured out when you actually do this stuff, it works and works well. And the answer is, the CEO is, if you want to do this properly, hire the people. It's that simple. We eat our own dog food, so a third of our development team's blind, 2/3 of my advisory board don't see the world the way the rest of us do, and you have to take the attitude that you actually lack the knowledge and experience, and thank you for saying, I don't know, and you need to actually fully embrace that idea. It actually works, and it comes from, you know, a place of naive trust to actually do this stuff, but the results speak for themselves. You wind up with better technology, better fitted to the end use case, and just a better alignment. It's a lot harder to screw up when the people you're building for are in the driver's seat.
Perfect. So any questions from the audience? I'm not sure how we're going for time, but I think we've got about 10 minutes. If anyone had any question, yes.
Hello.
Can I give you a mic? Is there a mic?
I could just talk
Okay.
loud if you like, so I will get back.
All right.
Do you want a mic? I don't mind. I build AI systems. The last company that I built was acquired by IBM. At the time of acquisition, we were doing about 60 million live interactions. We worked in complex hyper-clients areas like health and financial services. You know, there's a lot of knee-jerk around, privacy. The average end user doesn't actually care. We were always told we need to think about it, put it in there, and the average end user would trade off utility for privacy. They would give data because we probably all use some form of lacking system to get here. We all traded off privacy for utility. I think personally where we need to go, and I'm really interested in what Adam was doing around complex systems thinking here, is essentially what we're doing is we're giving this data in the metaverse, which is richer, to get some sort of outcome. This information is being used to skew our behaviour a certain way. And that cost is being passed on. So for example, if you buy a whole bunch of pizza, or watch a whole bunch of television instead of interacting with people, or do a whole lot of behavioural stuff that serves an online retailer or an online social media company, they're getting a transactional event or an event out of that, and the cost is passed on to the environment or the country or the system. So my question is, don't you think the genie's out of the damn bottle? Like, we're already giving away private data. The only people who ever cared about it was technologists and futurists like us. It was about number 10,000 on ranked questions that we got from the end user, what about the private data? They never asked. Never. They were far more likely to say, here's my username, here's my password, here's where I live, here's everything.
We live in a capitalist society.
So is AMU with this complex systems thinking doing anything around how do we restructure reward in a kind of an ecosystem like a country that if you've got this data, you have an obligation to use it for some sort of social outcome or some sort of life outcome for that individual. Is there any way we can differentiate?
It's a huge question, and let's go out and have a big coffee to chew the fat on that one, because there's no easy answer. Did anyone want to make a comment?
Just repeat it back for Bella.
I can't really repeat it back, but I guess basically the comment was the genie's out of the bottle, the end user doesn't care about their privacy, we've all given it away, the horse has bolted.
Yeah, so rather than trying to regulate privacy, shouldn't we make companies accountable for using that data in a good way for our larger society?
I think we should do both of those things. I think we should keep companies accountable, but I don't think the genie is out of the bottle. I don't think you ever stop fighting to keep your rights in a situation like this. Some examples that are maybe less terrifying, but in a media arts perspective, if companies want to deliver what they think audiences want to see, that leads to a closing down of spontaneity, of serendipity, of stumbling across the Netflix movie that you never would have watched because the algorithm doesn't think you're interested in that, but then you have this wonderful experience of finding something new and different and totally out of the box. So when we keep convincing ourselves that technology knows what we want, we close off any opportunity for choice, newness, excitement, and I think that is a huge problem. And then we're also looking at this from the perspective of being in a functioning democracy, but what if we are not? And what if that data is available to people with slightly more nefarious intentions?
So I think this is, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, a reason for being for blockchain and Web3. That if you can actually tokenize, I think I get where you're coming from, if you can tokenize human state and therefore monitor human state change, then you can monetize life, so to speak, but it's not consumption of content, it's not consumption of goods, you're talking about, outcome. And I think that's where you're going here. And AR is really interesting because, once again, I'll say it again, this is about strapping a computer to your face that understands your context and intent. Well, what will Meta do with that intent, or Facebook would do that with that intent? What would Apple do differently? And it's really interesting to think about, let's look about health apps. What could we do to incentivize you to steer away from the cake and go towards, I wouldn't say fruit juice, I'd say the glass of water and an apple. What's the value to you as the consumer? And it's significant because we're talking about these subtle nudges, this ever blurring between AI and human user. And this is super exciting stuff. I think that's where the opportunity is actually going to be. So I think you're dead right.
Any more questions? Sure. Why don't you use
Just based off what you were just saying about basically giving people what they want. Google search results are, never the same, two computers side by side, different users. Do you think that there's a possibility that manufactured serendipity in metaverse worlds actually helps people discover the manufactured serendipity in their real lives, in real life, and just how, and enables them to see how brands control so much we think about the world and, and the legal frameworks of our governments? And is there a chance that the metaverse might actually help us, wake a little bit in the real world?
and abandon the internet?
There's some really lovely possibilities for awe and joy and spectacle in some of these experiences, and I've seen VR pieces, XR pieces that have done that and have really inspired a new way to look at things. And I think it would be quite interesting to address it in a way that you suggest, to kind of highlight some of the underlying issues. There's a long history of interactive media pre-XR that does that. There was a project by Mozilla and Brett Gaylor in 2015 called Do Not Track, which was a series of web episodes that tracked you online to show you how much you were being tracked online, and made it kind of fun and interactive and really informative at the same way. So I think there are some really fantastic kind of reflexive uses of these technologies to get people thinking a little bit more deeply. But also there's some really wonderful experiences to be had too. The way that you can can connect with other people in some of these spaces. Some of the things I love are the playing with scale. So Marshmallow Laser Feast is a studio in the UK that has projects where you can shrink down to the size of a mosquito and fly around a rainforest, and then you can be enormous and like the size of a country. That kind of stuff is quite fascinating and has really interesting creative applications.
Belle, are you trying to speak?
Not really.
Okay. I have a few questions that were posted to us as well. One is, how can we ensure a safe space for women and non-binary people is included in the metaverse? Anyone like to take that one?
I think back to what we were saying before is that designing with rather than for. Again, there's a long history of documentary film, which is partly my background, where there was a lot of making films about people and that very extractive mode of filmmaking, and then recognising that if you actually partner with, you get a much stronger product at the end. For instance, designing for is where you end up with safety bubbles in metaverse VR worlds, and if you just put a bubble around yourself and another virtual character can't come up and touch you, then that solved the problem. And of course it hasn't. And so yes, we really do need to think through, rather than putting in technical fixes to abuse, harassment that happens in online spaces, thinking about the kind of community that we are encouraging to develop in the first place and ensuring these spaces can be safe.
So they're the same issues as in real life?
Yeah, there's definitely a cultural evolution that's needed to be made. You know, people ask me this question a lot. You know, I co-run a company and I'm female. But I think there's also something to be said for advocating for yourself, advocating for others. And when you see these things in virtual worlds, you actually address it. You're fearless. You shouldn't condone behaviour you don't want to see, you know, that's not safe, that's harassment. Go straight up and say, not cool. You know what I mean? It's not just up to the big tech companies. It's up to everybody. You don't like it, do something about it, honestly. We can't just sit back and be passive.
Another online question mailed to us was, why did Second Life fail? And why do we think the metaverse is going to succeed?
This is a great question. I like this. I was fortunate enough to actually meet the creator of Second Life several times. I hang out with him in San Francisco, and his Second Life, I can't remember what it was called now, in the VR space. Yeah. Yep. And here's the thing. He had a fundamental issue, which is that it's a freaking lonely place out there. And if everyone can make their own universe, you get 1,000 or 1,000,000 universes with one person in it. And this is the conundrum around VR as a gateway into these technologies. It's a bunch of lonely mid-20s white dudes with their VR headsets, and some Asian guys too. But it's a choke point to this possibility of the metaverse, and I think it's going to resolve as. I'm hoping this is recorded because maybe I'm going to be wrong in 10 years, but we'll find out. But I think it will also be an also-ran. I think the same problems that existed for Second Life happen after it with AltSpace VR, and I think they'll continue to happen because the access point is antisocial. To close yourself off from reality, to go in VR, to connect with other people is, and you might have reasons to be there, to game, to, have virtual sex or whatever, but they're about the two reasons to do it. I think that the more interesting evolution of social norms and behaviour through AR is going to be a lot more interesting because it allows you to still connect human to human in reality, and the social norms about that reality will be enforced because they're real. You don't get to step out of your skin in AR land and become a separate avatar. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, most people don't realise when you're in a game, often you're in an instance of a game in the cloud. So, if, say, for instance, we both jumped into the same game, there's a chance that we'll never see each other. It depends on how popular the game is. But, yeah, often you're playing with NPCs, so, non-player characters. They're all bots, and you just don't know. You're playing around, you think you're having a good time, a lot of people in this game, but they're not real. So there's also that.
It's funny, my son said to me the other day that someone was an NPC. And I'm like, what? Non-player character. He was talking about people just on the street. And it's like, no, Ben, no one is a non-player character. And he's like, they are. They're just nice people. They're just around, but they don't mean anything to us.
Westworld.
And it's like, they do, actually. They're our neighbours. You know, they're the bus driver. Or it freaks me out.
I can imagine this son being like getting behind the wheel and going, "This is just like GTA." Like,
Well, I think it's almost time to close the event formally and just to catch up over another half an hour of networking. But I just wanted to, there was a final question that I think is a good one, seeing that we're at the Startup Hub. This is, where is it? What would be the key for startups to provide metaverse services to current industry and companies? So this is our fantastic closing. Just, Belle, we'll kind of maybe let you finish that one.
So kind. Yeah. Does it mean that they want to know, like, in which industries?
Probably like how to get started and what are the fundamental things they need to do if they want to move into Metaverse as a startup.
Okay. Yeah, they can firstly just, I think there are a few forums, as much as Robert just rated Meta lower than Google just now. But I think Meta and Microsoft, they formed a Metaverse Standards Forum recently. That could be a good place as well for you to get some information. And from universities, I'm very sure there are so much info that you can get. So equip yourself with the minimal knowledge. And after that, you can look at the market. Like currently, we are working on retail, entertainment, hospitality. These few industries are crazy. So apart from gaming, so our background of gaming surprisingly works very well with bricks and mortar. So I can only say that this has just got started. So just equip yourself with the knowledge and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Every day I make a lot of mistakes.
Thank you so much, Belle. Did anyone else have one parting comment for a startup wanting to enter the Metaverse industry?
There's so many problems to solve. I mean, pick one, try something, see if you like it. If you don't, you know, and you feel compassionate and fiercely about it, solve it. It's as easy as that. I mean, I came from a fashion design background, like completely the opposite world, dominated by women, no men. And I turned up in 2016, and my partner, David Francis, co-founder, who was running ARVR Sydney Meetup, I think, with Scott O'Brien. And I met him there, and I knew straight away what I wanted to do and how I was going to apply myself. So, you know, we've all got transferable skills. Don't think you don't. You can get in right away. Find somebody, work out what you want to do, and go solve that problem.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd say just start. If you're entrepreneurially minded, just begin. You're going to pivot 3 or 4 times the first 6 months anyway, so what you start with isn't going to be find out what you're with. And also just to mention on that note, if you don't feel like a startup and don't feel like taking that leap, go get a job in one of these companies. I mean, we've got 12 PhD and postdoc positions we just opened last week, for instance. Come work for us.
Amazing.
Yeah, I guess I would just add, thinking technology first is usually not the best idea and ends up with slightly bloated products that are full of bells and whistles that aren't necessary. Thinking about people, audience, citizens, that's going to get you a whole lot further, I think.
Thank you so much to Belle and our panel members. Give them a round of applause. Thanks. And thank you very much for UTS Startups, Sydney Knowledge Hub, City of Sydney Visiting Entrepreneurs Program. We have so many places like this that are full of opportunities to learn. If you haven't subscribed to the Spark newsletter, Spark Festival, every Monday it comes out, and there's about 2 or 3 events every day. And they're usually free, and they're full of clever people like our guest tonight. So thanks everyone for coming, and continue the conversation. Thanks, Belle. Thanks everyone.